Imagine a world where the sun is no longer your friend. Perhaps a massive solar flare has stripped our atmosphere, making the surface a radioactive wasteland. Or maybe a nuclear winter has frozen the world under miles of ice and ash. To survive, humanity has no choice but to retreat. Deep. We move into the vast, winding cave systems of the Earth, carving out cities in the cold, damp dark. At first, we carry our technology with us. We have flashlights, LEDs, and artificial suns. But resources are finite. Batteries die. Bulbs shatter. After a few generations, the last artificial light flickers out forever. Now, imagine 1,000 years have passed. 50 generations of humans have been born, lived, and died without ever knowing what a ray of light looks like. What would we become? We like to think that we would still look like us, just humans living in the dark. But evolution is a cold, efficient machine. It doesn't care about your beauty or your history. It only cares about efficiency. And in the absolute darkness of the underworld, the human form we know today is a waste of energy. We wouldn't just be living in the dark, we would be transformed by it. We would become the stuff of nightmares. The first thing to go would be your most prized possession, your eyes. The human eye is an incredibly expensive organ for the body to maintain. It requires a massive amount of neural processing power and blood flow. In a world of total darkness, an eye is nothing more than a liability, a soft, vulnerable hole in your skull that can get infected but provides zero benefit. Within just a few centuries, evolution would begin to phase them out. First, we would become severely nearsighted. Then, the color-sensing cones would wither away. Eventually, the eyelids would fuse shut, and the skin would grow over the sockets. 1,000 years from now, your descendants wouldn't have eyes at all. They would have smooth, unbroken skin stretching across their foreheads. The very concept of sight would vanish from our language. We would be a species of the blind, navigating a world we can never visualize. But as one sense dies, others must be pushed to supernatural limits. To survive in the tunnels, we would develop biological sonar, echolocation. Just like bats or dolphins, we would learn to navigate by sound. Our ears would undergo a radical transformation. They would grow larger, more mobile, and more sensitive, capable of picking up the slight vibration of a pebble falling a mile away. We would navigate by clicking our tongues or humming, listening for the way the sound bounces off the cavern walls. Our entire perception of the world would be built on echoes. You wouldn't see a wall, you would hear its distance. You wouldn't see a predator, you would feel the shift in air pressure as it moved toward you. This constant auditory processing would likely change the shape of the human brain, expanding the temporal lobes until our skulls shifted into a new, more bulbous form. We would become acoustic predators, silent and deadly, tuned into a frequency of existence that our surface-dwelling ancestors could never imagine. But the most haunting change would be the skin. Without the need for protection from UV rays, the human body would stop producing melanin entirely. Our skin would lose its pigment, becoming a ghostly, translucent white. But it wouldn't stop there. To save energy, the skin would thin out until it became almost like parchment or thin glass. You would be able to see the pulse of the veins underneath, the dark mass of the organs, and the white of the bones. We would become the glass people, glowing with a faint, sickly pallor in the absolute blackness. And because the caves are humid and damp, we would likely lose all of our body hair, becoming smooth and slick to prevent fungal infections. We would look less like primates and more like deep-sea creatures, pale, wet, and alien. Our physical stature would change too. In the cramped, low-ceiling tunnels of the deep earth, being tall is a death sentence. Evolution would favor those who are shorter, more compact, and more flexible. Over 1,000 years, our spines would curve, and our limbs would grow longer and more spider-like to help us crawl over jagged rocks and through narrow crevices. Our fingers and toes would grow elongated, perhaps even developing sensitive pads or hooked nails for better grip in the damp environment. We would lose the ability to walk upright, finding it much more efficient to move on all fours. We would become the crawlers, moving through the darkness with a terrifying, fluid speed that would make a modern human's skin crawl. The chemical makeup of our bodies would shift as well. Without sunlight, our bodies can no longer produce vitamin D. On the surface, this would lead to bone deformities and death. But in the deep, we would have to evolve a new way to process calcium. Perhaps we would develop a symbiotic relationship with cave fungi or bacteria, or perhaps our kidneys would become hyper-efficient at extracting minerals from the cave water. Our metabolism would slow down significantly, allowing us to survive on the meager offerings of the underworld, crickets, blind fish, and moss. We would become masters of low-energy living, capable of sitting in total stillness for days, waiting for the slightest vibration of prey. But what about our minds? What happens to the human soul when it is buried for a millennium? Our culture would become a tapestry of sounds and touches. Stories would be passed down through complex songs and rhythmic chants. We would have no concept of day or night, blue or green. Our world would be defined by the cold deep and the warm vents. We might even lose the ability to speak as we do now, moving toward a language of clicks, whistles, and low-frequency hums that carry better through the stone. We would be a hive-minded society, connected by the echoes of our shared environment, huddled together for warmth in a world that never warms up. This isn't just a fantasy, it's a warning. We are a product of our environment. We think of our bodies as permanent, but they are just clay, being molded by the forces of nature every single day. If we ever lose the sun, we lose our humanity as we know it. We would survive, yes. Humans are incredibly resilient. But the thing that emerges from the caves after 1,000 years wouldn't be us. It would be a new species, one designed for the silence, the damp, and the eternal dark. It would be the skinwalker of our own making. So, the next time you feel the sun on your face, don't take it for granted. It's the only thing keeping you from becoming a ghost in the dark. Stay curious. Stay in the light. And remember, the darkness doesn't just hide monsters, it creates them.